faint, trembling cry drifted from the rusty green mailbox on Maple Avenue, halting Eleanor Fisher mid-step as autumn leaves whispered around her ankles. At 72, Eleanor was used to silence, her days echoing with the ticking of a clock that seemed louder since Harold died 3 winters ago. Carrying her canvas grocery bags, she paused beneath the grey October sky, straining to listen, heart pounding like it hadn't in years. Was it truly a meow she'd heard? Or just the wind sighing through the trees, mocking the emptiness she felt inside? She set the bags down on the wet sidewalk, brushing a lock of silver hair from her face, her breath quickening with a strange mix of fear and wonder. Could someone have done something so cruel as to trap a living creature in such a small, dark space? And why her mailbox? Why on this lonely stretch of Maple Avenue where nobody ever seemed to look twice at her anymore? The rain began to fall in soft pinpricks, as though the sky itself was weeping over some secret pain. Her eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall, driven by a sudden surge of protective instinct. Could a small cat hidden in shadows be the thread that would stitch together the unraveling edges of her life? You won't believe how this story ends. It'll stir tears from even the hardest of hearts and unveil a secret no one ever imagined waiting in the dark. She swallowed hard, leaning closer, ears straining as delicate claws scratched against cold metal, like hope begging for release. The weight of her loneliness seemed to lift, just a fraction, replaced by the pulsing urgency of a life depending on her courage. What if this was a sign, meant only for her, a reminder that she wasn't as forgotten as she feared? Her mind tumbled with questions, possibilities flickering like candle flames in the gloom of her quiet existence. Could this helpless creature be the reason she'd held on all this time, even through long nights when sorrow wrapped around her like a shroud? She reached out a trembling hand, fingertips brushing the icy surface of the mailbox door, sensing the fragile warmth trapped within. A part of her recoiled, terrified of what she might find, but an even stronger part refused to walk away. A breeze rustled the trees overhead, carrying whispers of something bigger than coincidence. Was it fate? Or simply a cruel accident that this cat had ended up on her doorstep in her life today of all days? Could you have ignored cries like those? Or would you have felt, deep in your bones, that destiny was calling? Eleanor hesitated, the sound of her breath mingling with the rhythm of rain drumming gently on the metal box. 1,000 memories flashed before her eyes, of laughter with Harold, of silent dinners alone, of wishing for one more reason to wake up tomorrow. She thought of how small the world could become when you lost the person who once filled every corner of your life. Now here was this tiny soul, trapped and frightened, needing someone to be brave enough to open a door. Her heart twisted at the thought of a creature left unseen, unloved, crying out in the dark for a kindness it might never receive. She felt old bones ache as she leaned in closer, driven by a hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. Could one act of courage turn the tide of a life spent waiting for anything to change? Or was she about to open the door on something too painful to bear, some cruel reminder of how fragile life could be? A single tear slipped down her cheek, catching on the corner of her trembling smile. And in that moment, she knew she could not turn away, no matter what awaited her on the other side. And as Eleanor slowly opened that mailbox, she had no idea that what lay inside was more than a terrified kitten. It was the first crack of light breaking through the longest night of her life. Inside the mailbox, huddled in a corner, was a tiny ball of fur, white as fresh snow except for a single black patch over one golden eye. The kitten's ribs were visible beneath matted fur, its eyes wide with a terror that sliced through Eleanor's chest like cold steel. She let out a soft gasp, the sound snatched away by the breeze, as the kitten shrank back further, mewing so faintly it was barely a sound at all. How long had this poor creature been trapped in such darkness, alone and freezing while the world carried on outside? Was it possible that someone had meant to abandon it, or was there another reason this animal had ended up here, at her door? She reached in slowly, careful not to frighten it, whispering gentle words she hadn't spoken to anyone in ages. "Shh, little one, it's okay. I've got you now," she murmured, feeling her voice tremble as though it were the first time she'd dared to care again. The kitten flinched, pressing itself into the metal as if trying to disappear into the shadows. But when Eleanor's fingers brushed its fur, the tiny creature let out a soft sigh, collapsing against her palm as though surrendering to hope. Could such fragile trust bloom in a moment between two lost souls, both aching for warmth? But here's what nobody saw coming. This kitten wasn't just abandoned, it carried something that would change Eleanor's life forever. Cradling the trembling bundle against her chest, Eleanor felt its tiny heartbeat fluttering wildly, like a bird trapped in a cage. Tears welled in her eyes, not just for the kitten's suffering, but for the flood of forgotten tenderness rising inside her. People passed by on the sidewalk, umbrellas blooming like flowers under the rain, oblivious to the miracle unfolding in Eleanor's shaking arms. How could life feel so impossibly cruel and breathtakingly beautiful at the same time? She tried to steady her breathing, afraid her sobs might frighten the kitten again. In the curve of her arms, the small body relaxed, eyes drooping with exhaustion and newfound safety. She glanced up at the rain-silvered sky, whispering Harold's name as if he might somehow see this moment from wherever he'd gone. Could he have sent this little one to her, to fill the quiet spaces he'd left behind? Or was she simply weaving meaning into chance, desperate to believe love never truly dies? Because deep down, Eleanor felt certain, this kitten was here for a reason she was only beginning to glimpse. She rushed back into her house, clutching the kitten as though letting go would mean losing everything all over again. Her living room felt warmer somehow, even though the heater rattled in the corner as it always did. She set the kitten on a soft towel, gently drying its soaked fur with hands that trembled from adrenaline and awe. Tiny paws curled into her fingers, the little creature mewing in a voice that seemed to echo in the hollows of her chest. She reached for a saucer and poured a bit of warm milk, praying it wouldn't upset the kitten's empty stomach. Could something so small, so helpless, carry a secret so large it would transform everything she believed about fate? As the kitten drank in delicate licks, Eleanor studied the black patch over its eye, sensing there was more to this animal than met the eye. Was there a hidden story behind how it ended up inside her mailbox on this particular day of her life? Or was she simply a lonely woman desperate to find meaning where there was none? Yet something whispered to her that nothing, especially not this moment, was an accident. And just as Eleanor was beginning to feel a fragile hope blooming in her chest, she noticed a glint of silver tangled in the kitten's damp fur, something small, unexpected, and impossibly mysterious. It was a tiny silver locket, no bigger than Eleanor's thumbnail, its delicate chain snarled in the kitten's fur like a secret refusing to let go. Her breath caught as she reached out, fingertips trembling, afraid to hurt the little creature while disentangling the fine links. How on earth had a kitten come to wear jewelry? And why would anyone place such a thing around its fragile neck? The kitten let out a soft squeak, but stayed still, eyes wide and trusting, as though it sensed Eleanor meant only kindness. She gently worked the chain free, heart pounding like a distant drum, her mind spinning with questions she never imagined asking. The silver surface was tarnished, its clasp nearly rusted shut, as though it had been waiting years for someone to open it again. Could an object so small truly carry the weight of an entire story, a piece of someone's heart lost and forgotten? She held it close to her face, trying to see if there was anything engraved, but the rain outside blurred her vision with unshed tears. Had this kitten been meant for her all along, or was it just the messenger of a message she'd yet to read? And how could she prepare her heart for whatever truth might lie inside that tiny silver case? You won't believe what was hidden in that locket, a secret that would tie Eleanor's past and future together in ways she never imagined possible. Finally, she found the tiny hinge and gently pried it open, barely breathing as the clasp creaked in protest. Inside, pressed beneath a thin layer of glass, lay a photograph faded by time, a black and white snapshot of a man and woman smiling under a tree. Eleanor felt the floor sway beneath her feet, gripping the table's edge as a sob wrenched from deep inside her chest. Because the man in the photo was Harold, her late husband, his arm around a woman Eleanor didn't recognize, how could Harold's picture end up around the neck of a stray kitten, stuffed into her mailbox, as though delivered straight to her door by fate? Her pulse roared in her ears, memories of Harold flooding back, mingling grief and disbelief in equal measure. She stared at the mysterious woman beside him, trying to decipher clues in the tilt of her smile or the glimmer in her eyes. Was this a secret Harold had kept from her, a chapter of his life she'd never known? Or was there an innocent explanation waiting somewhere just beyond the edge of her comprehension? Could you look at a photo like that and not wonder if everything you believed about your marriage had been a beautiful lie? Eleanor collapsed into her favorite armchair, kitten cradled against her chest, as though seeking warmth from the shock trembling through her bones. She kept glancing between the kitten and the photo, mind spinning, heart breaking all over again as new questions clawed at her peace. Was Harold the man she thought he was, or had he lived a life apart from her, filled with secrets and half-told stories? She brushed her tears away, whispering to the kitten, needing to speak the truth aloud, even if only to a pair of gentle, listening ears. "Who are you, little one? And why did you bring me this?" The kitten blinked slowly, as if holding mysteries too vast for human words. Eleanor felt both furious and desperate for answers, but also strangely alive, as though fate had chosen her for some unfinished business. Could this be a chance to understand Harold more fully, even in death, or was it simply the universe playing a cruel trick? Outside, the rain fell harder, as though washing away everything she'd ever thought she knew. And deep inside, a spark of courage began to flicker, urging her to seek the truth no matter how painful it might be. But just as Eleanor was summoning the strength to look closer at the photo, she heard a knock at the door, a knock that would turn this mystery into something far bigger than she could ever have imagined. The knock echoed through Eleanor's small living room like a thunderclap, sharp and urgent against the steady drumming of rain on the roof. She froze, locket clutched tight in one hand, the kitten pressed close against her chest as though it could shield her from whatever lay beyond that door. Who could possibly be visiting her on a stormy afternoon when most folks stayed safe and dry in their homes? Her mind spun with possibilities, each one more bewildering than the last. A neighbor, a stranger, someone connected to the photo. Could this person be the missing piece of the puzzle, the answer to the questions that now consumed her every breath? She set the kitten gently on the armchair, whispering for it to stay, though she suspected it somehow already knew the importance of this moment. Each step toward the door felt heavy, as if time itself had thickened around her, making every inch harder to cross. The knock came again, softer this time, like someone hesitant but determined not to leave. Eleanor wiped her tears, gathering every ounce of courage left in her 72-year-old frame. How could a simple door hold back the tide of a truth waiting to crash into her life? What happened next will warm your heart in ways you'd never expect, and prove that love has a way of finding us even when we least believe it's possible. With trembling fingers, Eleanor turned the knob and slowly pulled the door open, breath held tight in her chest. Standing on her doorstep was a woman around 40, drenched from the rain, dark hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and hope. In her hand she held a faded envelope, edges worn soft as velvet, as though it had been read 1,000 times. The woman's eyes flicked down to the kitten visible behind Eleanor, and a gasp escaped her trembling lips. "Is that Snowball?" the woman whispered, voice breaking like thin ice underfoot. Eleanor felt her own words die on her tongue, stunned by the name and the certainty with which it was spoken. The woman stepped closer, glancing from Eleanor to the silver locket in her hand. "I've been searching for that cat for months, and for whoever found that locket, because it belonged to my mother." Could you have imagined a moment like this, when a stranger's story collided so perfectly with your own? Eleanor ushered her inside, waves of curiosity and compassion washing over the fear that had gripped her only moments before. They sat side by side on the old sofa, rain battering the windows like applause from a distant audience. The woman introduced herself as Lisa, explaining how her mother, Margaret, had passed away years ago, but had once been close friends with Harold. Eleanor's heart twisted as she listened, realizing Harold's smile in the photo wasn't a secret of betrayal, but a memory from a life he'd lived long before they met. Lisa told how Margaret had always cherished that locket, carrying it everywhere as a token of her youth and the friendships that shaped her. When Margaret passed, Lisa had tried to keep the locket safe, but one day, in a flurry of moving boxes and a stray kitten's curiosity, Snowball had slipped out wearing it. The kitten had disappeared, vanishing into the neighborhood, leaving Lisa devastated and fearing she'd lost both the locket and the last piece of her mother's story. Tears sparkled in Eleanor's eyes as relief and gratitude poured through her chest like sunlight. Could it be that all along Harold had left her nothing but love, and that this kitten was simply the universe's way of giving her one more piece of his past? Because sometimes the answers we seek come to us wrapped in fur, with golden eyes shining through the rain. Lisa and Eleanor talked for hours. The kitten curled peacefully between them as if it, too, knew a chapter was closing and a new one opening. They laughed through tears as they shared stories of Harold and Margaret, two young souls who'd once danced beneath summer trees before life took them down separate paths. The rain eased, leaving behind a gentle hush that seemed to bless the room with calm and possibility. Lisa promised to visit often, insisting Snowball seemed perfectly at home with Eleanor, who found herself unable to imagine letting the kitten go. Could a small creature rescued from darkness truly heal the deepest wounds in a human heart? Eleanor found herself believing it more with each passing minute, her grief softening into gratitude. Snowball purred, curling tighter in her lap, as though to say he was exactly where he was meant to be. Eleanor gazed out the window, the clouds parting to reveal a fragile beam of golden light breaking through. She whispered Harold's name, feeling him close as though he'd orchestrated this gift from beyond. And for the first time in years, she felt certain that tomorrow would be a day worth waking up for. And so Eleanor discovered that sometimes the smallest creature can carry the biggest miracles, and that even in the loneliest chapters of our lives, love has a way of finding its way back home.